So Dr. Bierman, we touched on this a little bit in previous modules, but let's talk about why a tolerance may require a change in routine. And can you share why this happens and what are the suggestions you might have for our listeners?
Because I have a lot of experience working with opiates, I have a hard time getting my head around cannabis tolerance. And that's because I've been doing this since 2000, and most of the people that I see continue to get the same results with the same amount of cannabis. But when tolerance does develop, there's probably 2 or 3 reasons for that. One is that the body may be producing more of the enzymes that metabolize the cannabinoids, the phytocannabinoids. Another is that the cells may be getting used to having a higher level of cannabinoids. And those are 2 of the most important things. Now, the idea of taking a herbal holiday is something that I've heard Dr. Deborah Malka talk about. And Dr. Malka is both a MD and has a PhD in herbology. And I believe that she knows a heck of a lot more about the underlying reason to take an herbal holiday. But when you do, if you need it, and as I say, a lot of people who are using cannabis don't, it basically allows your body to recalibrate so that you begin to get the same therapeutic results with a lower dose. Also, I've noticed in terms of tolerance that people are more likely to develop tolerance to the side effects of cannabis than to the therapeutic effects, which has always seemed odd to me, but that's often what I've seen, that people may be a little bit slowed down, they may be a little bit tired initially, may interfere with their driving initially, and then after a couple of weeks, they maybe they've developed more enzymes, maybe their cells are more used to having this kind of cellular environment, and they don't have these side effects because they developed tolerance to them. So certainly some patients who are using cannabis would be wise to take an herbal holiday, and an herbal holiday doesn't need to be for a long period of time. I would say probably 10 to 14 days would be sufficient. There are others that might feel that it should be a little bit longer, but I think that's plenty long enough. I also, if I know Dr. Malka is semi-retired and is in New Mexico, but she would be a good resource to check on and see what she has to say. I know that she gave an excellent presentation a couple of years ago in Denver at the Medical Marijuana for Healthcare Professionals Conference. And that was held, well, there was one this year, but I think it was held last year or the year before, where Dr. Malka spoke. And if that's available online, people might want to take a look at that. And she spent about 5 minutes talking about the importance of taking an herbal holiday.
Gotcha. And Corinne and I did that with my father-in-law and her dad. We would do a little break. We wouldn't take the 10 to 14 days. We did about 3 to 5 days and got right back into it. And, when we went through this, it was the blind leading the blind. We had trial and error. We were so fortunate that we did not have any error whatsoever. I mean, really, we were truly blessed. And so people would always ask us, how do you know? What are you hiding? Are you telling the truth? And it's like, why should we lie about something like this?
Yeah.
And then,
well, like I say, Dr. Malka has a PhD in herbology, and she recognizes that a herbal holiday, and I think she doesn't just mean that for cannabis, but for other herbs as well.
So let me see here. You want to talk about tolerance reduction tips on that, or
it happens so infrequently. In terms of, quote, withdrawal symptoms, unquote, this is something that one can argue about if they ever occur with cannabis, because what has been purported to be withdrawal symptoms, this partly comes from a study that was done by Rhys Jones, who's a psychiatrist at Langley Porter at UC San Francisco and a longtime critic of medical cannabis. And he had people on 200 milligrams of THC a day, and then stop them after 20 days or 30 days. He was trying to precipitate withdrawal symptoms. And in my opinion, he didn't. What he did precipitate was people who felt a little bit anxious, people who felt a little depressed, and this was for a couple of days, and people who had difficulty sleeping. Well, is since anxiety is the second most common reason why doctors recommend cannabis for medical reasons, maybe these people were just having a return of the underlying symptoms that caused them to use cannabis in the first place. Oh, I forgot to say that in order to protect himself that he wasn't exposing people who weren't heavy cannabis users, he only had heavy cannabis users that were involved in this. So you have to ask yourself, why were the people in his study heavy cannabis users to begin with? And one would say, would a reasonable assumption would be, well, some or many or most or all were self-medicating certain issues such as anxiety, depression, and sleep. So certainly there are some symptoms that will occur. I mean, after all, why are you taking cannabis in the first place? We're not talking about the use of cannabis for recreational purposes, but we're talking about its use for medical purposes. Yeah. So if you're going to stop using it, you're going to have a return of the symptoms that you were treating with it in the first place. In terms of whether or not stopping cannabis itself is going to create problems, if there are problems, they will be mild and transient.